The night Eliza Kincaid was stood up at Harvest table, the restaurant's ambient lighting did little to hide the tears threatening to spill from her eyes. She checked her phone for the 20th time. No messages, no calls, nothing from the blind date her assistant had arranged. 45 minutes had passed since the reservation time, and the sympathetic glances from the waitstaff were becoming unbearable. "Excuse me, miss. Would you like to order, or are you still waiting?" The waiter's voice was gentle, but Eliza could sense the table was needed for other patrons. "I'll just take the check for my wine, please." Her voice was barely audible. As the waiter nodded and walked away, a commotion erupted near the entrance. A man in his early 30s with disheveled dark hair was trying to negotiate with the hostess while holding the hand of a little girl who looked about 6 years old. "Please, I know we don't have a reservation, but it's her birthday, and I promised her the chocolate cake here. Just a quick dessert at the bar?" His deep voice carried across the restaurant. The little girl looked up at him with wide eyes. "It's okay, Daddy. We can go somewhere else." Eliza watched as the hostess shook her head apologetically. Friday nights at Harvest table were booked weeks in advance, a fact Eliza knew well, having pulled strings through her company to secure her own reservation. Before she could think twice, Eliza stood up. "Excuse me," she called out. "You can join me if you'd like. I have a table for two, and it seems my companion isn't going to show." The man turned, surprise evident on his face. He hesitated, then looked down at his daughter, who was now bouncing excitedly. "That's very kind, but we wouldn't want to impose," he said, approaching Eliza's table. "Not at all." "I'm Eliza." She extended her hand, noticing his strong jawline and the kind eyes that crinkled slightly at the corners. "I'm Hudson York, and this is my daughter, Sophie." He shook her hand. "Are you sure we're not interrupting?" "Absolutely sure. In fact, you'd be saving me from the embarrassment of dining alone after being stood up." Sophie climbed into the chair opposite Eliza, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Someone was mean to you. That's not nice." Eliza couldn't help but smile. "No, it's not nice at all. But now I get to have dinner with you instead, and that seems like a much better evening." Hudson sat down next to his daughter, his expression a mix of gratitude and lingering uncertainty. "Thank you. This is unexpected. Dad promised me chocolate cake because I got a gold star in school today," Sophie announced proudly, settling into her chair. "Well, that certainly deserves a celebration," Eliza said warmly. As the waiter returned with menus, Eliza noticed Hudson's slight grimace when he glanced at the prices. Without missing a beat, she said, "This is my treat. I insist as a thank you for saving me from a lonely dinner." "We can't let you do that," Hudson protested. "Please. My company has an expense account for client dinners, and since my client canceled, it would be a shame to waste it." The lie slipped out easily. There was no client, just a blind date, and the bill would come from her personal account, a drop in the ocean of her fortune. Hudson seemed to relax slightly, though a hint of pride still clouded his features. "All right, but only if you let me get the tip." Sophie, oblivious to the adult negotiations, was already engrossed in the children's menu. "Look, Daddy, they have mac and cheese shaped like stars." Dinner progressed with surprising ease. Hudson explained that he worked as a high school English teacher and coached the wrestling team. He'd been raising Sophie alone since his wife died from complications during childbirth. The pain was evident in his eyes, but there was also tremendous love when he looked at his daughter. "Sophie is my whole world," he said simply, ruffling her hair as she devoured her star-shaped pasta. Eliza found herself captivated by this man who spoke about literature with passion and treated his daughter with such tenderness and respect. When asked about herself, she kept her answers vague. She worked in investments. Her hours were flexible, and she had recently moved back to the city after traveling for work. What she didn't mention was that she was Eliza Kincaid, founder and CEO of Kincaid Innovations, a tech company she'd built from the ground up that had revolutionized renewable energy storage and was now valued at over $11 billion. She didn't mention the 3 homes she owned, the private jet, or the fact that she could buy this entire restaurant without blinking. For one night, she was just Eliza, a woman enjoying dinner with a kind man and his adorable daughter. When Sophie's chocolate cake arrived with a candle, both Eliza and Hudson sang "Happy Birthday," causing the little girl to beam with delight. "Make a wish," Eliza encouraged. Sophie closed her eyes tight, then blew out the candle with gusto. "I'm not telling what I wished for, or it won't come true," she declared. As the evening wound down, Hudson insisted on leaving the tip a generous amount that Eliza suspected might have been more than he could comfortably afford. "Thank you again," he said, as they stood outside the restaurant. "This was really nice. It was my pleasure, truly." Eliza found herself reluctant to say goodbye. Sophie tugged on her hand. "Do you like the playground? We're going to the big one in Central Park tomorrow." "Sophie," Hudson chided gently, "I'm sure Eliza has plans." Eliza hesitated only briefly. "Actually, I don't. What time will you be there?" The surprise on Hudson's face quickly gave way to a warm smile. "Around noon, if that works. It's perfect. I'll see you both then." As Eliza watched them walk away, Hudson holding his daughter's hand, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a lightness, a genuine connection. She slipped into the back of her waiting town car, careful to make sure Hudson and Sophie had turned the corner first. "Home, Miss Kincaid?" her driver asked. "Yes, please, James." She leaned back against the leather seat, already looking forward to tomorrow. The next day dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a park outing. Eliza dressed in jeans, a simple blouse and comfortable flats, a far cry from her usual business attire. She almost laughed at her reflection. None of her employees would recognize the woman staring back at her. She instructed her driver to drop her off 2 blocks from the playground entrance. As she approached, she spotted Hudson and Sophie immediately. Sophie was attempting the monkey bars, with Hudson standing below, ready to catch her if she fell. "You're doing great, Soph. Just 1 more bar," he encouraged. Sophie's face was a mask of determination as she reached for the final rung. When she made it, Hudson scooped her up in a celebratory hug that made Eliza's heart swell. "Eliza," Sophie spotted her first, wriggling out of her father's arms to race over. "You came. Did you see me on the monkey bars? I did it all by myself." "I did see." "That was amazing," Eliza said, genuinely impressed. Hudson approached more slowly, a smile playing on his lips. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come." "I said I would," Eliza replied simply. The afternoon unfolded in a series of simple pleasures, pushing Sophie on the swings, watching her navigate the climbing structure, and sitting on a bench talking while Sophie made friends with other children. "So what happened to your date last night?" Hudson asked eventually. Eliza shrugged. "It was a blind date arranged by my assistant. I guess he took 1 look through the window and decided to bail." Hudson shook his head. "His loss, seriously." The sincerity in his voice made her cheeks warm. "What about you? Do you date much?" "Between teaching, coaching, and Sophie, not really." He watched his daughter playing tag with a group of kids. "It's been just the 2 of us for so long, I'm not sure I remember how dating works." "You're doing fine so far," Eliza said, surprising herself with her boldness. Hudson turned to look at her, a question in his eyes. Before he could speak, Sophie came running over, breathless and flushed. "I'm hungry. Can we get hot dogs?" They bought hot dogs from a vendor and sat on a park bench to eat. Eliza couldn't remember the last time she'd had a street hot dog, probably not since college, before her company took off. It tasted better than any 5-star meal she'd had recently. As the afternoon wore on, Sophie's energy began to wane. She curled up against Hudson's side, her eyelids growing heavy. "I think someone's ready for a nap," Hudson said softly. "We should probably head home." Disappointment settled in Eliza's chest, but she nodded. "Of course." "But..." Hudson hesitated. "Maybe we could do this again, maybe without the playground next time," Eliza smiled. "I'd like that." They exchanged phone numbers, and Hudson programmed hers into his phone under simply Eliza. No last name, no company affiliation, just Eliza. It felt refreshing. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a comfortable rhythm. Coffee after Hudson finished teaching. Dinner at modest restaurants where Eliza insisted they split the bill, though she could have bought the entire block. Weekend outings with Sophie to museums, the zoo, and once to a puppet show that had the little girl giggling uncontrollably. Hudson never asked about Eliza's work beyond the basics, and she found herself grateful for his lack of curiosity. For once, someone was interested in her, not her money, not her company, just her. One evening, after they had put Sophie to bed following a movie night at Hudson's modest apartment, they sat on his worn couch, a glass of wine in hand. "You're amazing with her," Hudson said quietly. "She adores you." "The feeling is mutual. She's a special kid." "It's more than that. You treat her like a person, not just a child. You listen to her." He set his glass down. "Do you want children someday?" The question caught Eliza off guard. In her world of board meetings and investment decisions, family planning had always seemed like a distant concept. "I've never really thought about it," she admitted. "My work has always been all-consuming." "The mysterious job you never talk about," Hudson teased gently. Eliza shifted uncomfortably. "It's not that interesting." "Everything about you is interesting." He moved closer, his hand finding hers. "Eliza, I know we haven't known each other long, but I feel like I've been waiting to meet you." The sincerity in his voice made her breath catch. When he leaned in to kiss her, she met him halfway. His lips were soft, his touch gentle yet confident. It felt right in a way nothing had in a very long time. When they broke apart, Hudson's eyes searched hers. "I should probably tell you something," he said. Eliza tensed, preparing herself for whatever revelation might come. "I looked you up online," he admitted. "After our second date, I was curious." Her heart sank. "And what did you find?" "Nothing," he said, looking confused, which is strange in this day and age. "No social media, no LinkedIn, nothing. It's like you're a ghost." Relief washed over her. Her team was thorough in managing her digital footprint, keeping personal information scrubbed from public view. The Eliza Kincaid, who appeared in business publications and at industry events, was carefully separated from her private life. "I'm not big on social media," she said simply. Hudson laughed. "Clearly. It's refreshing, actually. Most people are living their lives online these days." He kissed her again, and Eliza let herself sink into the moment, pushing away the voice that reminded her she was building this relationship on a foundation of omission, if not outright deception. The fantasy couldn't last forever, though. Reality intruded 3 weeks later in the form of a market crisis that required her immediate attention. She was having breakfast with Hudson and Sophie on a Saturday morning when her secure phone buzzed with the emergency code. "I'm sorry, I have to take this," she said, stepping away from the table. Her CFO's voice was tight with stress. "Eliza, the Singapore markets are in freefall. Our Asia division needs direction immediately. The board is assembling for an emergency call in 30 minutes. I'll be there. Have the jet ready." She ended the call and returned to the table, where Sophie was explaining the intricacies of her school's upcoming science fair to her father. "Everything okay?" Hudson asked, concern evident in his expression. "Work emergency. I'm so sorry, but I have to go." She gathered her purse, mind already shifting to crisis management mode. "On a Saturday?" Hudson looked surprised. "It's international business. Different time zones." She kissed Sophie's head. "I'm sorry to miss hearing about your science project. Will you tell me all about it when I get back?" Sophie nodded, though disappointment clouded her features. "When will that be?" Hudson asked as he walked Eliza to the door. "I'm not sure. A few days, maybe a week." She couldn't meet his eyes. "I'll call when I can." His confusion was palpable. "A week? Eliza, what exactly do you do?" "It's complicated. I'll explain everything when I get back, I promise." She kissed him quickly. "I have to go." 3 days turned into 7, then 10. The crisis was worse than anticipated, requiring her physical presence in Singapore, then Hong Kong. She called when she could, brief conversations that left Hudson more confused than reassured. "You're in Asia?" he asked during one late-night call. "For an investment job. It's complicated," she repeated, hating how evasive she sounded. "So you keep saying." By the time she returned to New York, nearly 2 weeks had passed. She texted Hudson from the airport, asking if she could come over. His reply was simple: "We're home." When she knocked on his apartment door, it was Sophie who answered, her face lighting up. "Eliza, you're back." "Did you bring me something from your trip?" Eliza's heart sank. She hadn't even thought to buy souvenirs. "I'm sorry, sweetie. It was all work, no shopping." Hudson appeared behind his daughter, his expression guarded. "Welcome back." The coolness in his voice stung. "Can we talk?" He nodded toward the living room. "Sophie, honey, can you play in your room for a bit?" "But Eliza just got here." The little girl protested. "Just for a little while. Please." Sophie reluctantly retreated, casting glances over her shoulder. When they were alone, Hudson crossed his arms. "So, are you going to tell me what's really going on? Because investment analysts don't typically jet off to Asia at a moment's notice for weeks at a time." Eliza took a deep breath. "You're right. I haven't been completely honest with you." She watched as his expression darkened. "Are you married?" "Is that it?" "What? No." The accusation startled her. "Nothing like that." "Then what? Because I've been racking my brain trying to figure out why someone would be so secretive about their job. I'm not just an investment analyst." She paused, then decided to rip off the bandage. "I'm the founder and CEO of Kincaid Innovations." Hudson stared at her blankly. "It's a tech company," she continued. "We specialize in renewable energy storage solutions." Recognition dawned slowly on his face. "Wait, Kincaid, the Kincaid Innovations, that's always in the business news." "The billion-dollar company." 11 billion as of last quarter, she confirmed quietly. Hudson sank onto the couch, visibly processing. "You're a billionaire." "Yes. And you let me pay for coffee. You let me leave those tips at restaurants." His voice had a hollow quality. "I wanted you to see me, not my money." She sat beside him, not touching but close. "From the moment we met, you treated me like a person, not a bank account or a business connection. Do you know how rare that is in my world? But you lied to me." "I omitted. I never directly lied." Even to her own ears, the distinction sounded weak. "Lies of omission are still lies, Eliza. I'm an English teacher. I understand semantics." His jaw tightened. "Did you think I'd treat you differently if I knew, that I'd try to take advantage of you? No, it wasn't about that." She struggled to articulate feelings she'd barely acknowledged to herself. "People always want something from me. Always. Business deals, investments, donations, connections. Nobody ever just wants me." "I wanted you," he said quietly. "Just you." The past tense wasn't lost on Eliza. "And now?" Hudson ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know. I feel like I don't even know who you are. I'm the same person who pushed Sophie on the swings, who discussed Hemingway with you for hours, who kissed you on this couch." She reached for his hand. "The money doesn't change who I am." "But it changes things between us." He pulled his hand away. "You live in a world I can't even imagine. Private jets and emergency board meetings in Asia. Meanwhile, I'm saving up for Sophie's college fund and worrying about the rent increase next year. Those things don't matter to me." "They should. They're reality, my reality." He stood up, pacing. "And what about Sophie? She's gotten attached to you. What happens when your world pulls you away again? When you disappear for weeks at a time with barely a phone call?" The accusation stung because there was truth in it. "I'm sorry about that. The crisis caught me off guard. I should have communicated better." "Yes, you should have." His voice softened slightly. "Look, I need some time to process this. It's a lot to take in." Eliza nodded, fighting back tears. "I understand, Daddy." Sophie's small voice came from the hallway. "Why are you mad at Eliza?" Hudson's expression immediately gentled. "I'm not mad, sweetie. We're just having a grown-up talk." "You sound mad." Sophie approached cautiously. "Is Eliza leaving again?" The hurt in the child's eyes was almost too much for Eliza to bear. "I should go," she said quietly to Hudson. "Give you space to think." She knelt down to Sophie's level. "I need to go home now, but I'm not disappearing again, I promise. Pinky promise." Sophie held out her tiny finger. Eliza linked her pinky with Sophie's. "Pinky promise." As she left the apartment, the weight of what she might lose pressed heavily on her chest. She had finally found someone who saw her for herself, and her own secrets might have ruined everything. For 3 days, Eliza threw herself into work, trying to distract herself from the silence of her phone. On the 4th day, she made a decision. If Hudson couldn't come to terms with who she was, she would have to accept it, but not without fighting for what they had built together. She called him that evening. "Can we meet?" she asked when he answered. "There's something I need to show you." His hesitation was palpable. "I don't know, Eliza. Please, after this, if you still want space, I'll respect that." Finally, he agreed. "Sophie's at a sleepover tomorrow night." "I can meet you then. I'll pick you up at 7. When her town car pulled up outside his apartment building the next evening, Hudson was waiting on the steps. He slid into the backseat beside her, a careful distance between them. "Where are we going?" he asked. "My home. The real one." They drove in silence through the city, eventually turning into a tree-lined street in a historic neighborhood. The car stopped before a brownstone, elegant but not ostentatious. "This is yours?" Hudson asked as they got out. "One of 3 properties, but this is where I actually live." She led him up the steps and unlocked the door. "The others are more for business entertainment and investments." Inside, the home was warm and inviting, hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, walls lined with books. Not the sterile showcase he might have expected from a tech billionaire. "It's not what you imagined, is it?" she asked, watching his face. "No," he admitted. "It's normal, nicer than normal, but still." "Human," she smiled slightly. "That's the point. I wanted to show you where I really live, how I really live when I'm not being CEO Eliza Kincaid." She led him through the house, showing him her home office where she worked remotely, the kitchen where she attempted, and often failed, to cook, the living room where she curled up with books on rare, quiet evenings. "The money, the company, they're part of me, but they're not all of me," she said as they settled on the couch with glasses of wine. "The woman you've been spending time with these past weeks, that's the real me too." Hudson was quiet for a long moment. "Why did you approach us that night at the restaurant? You could have just left after being stood up." "Because Sophie looked so excited about that chocolate cake, and you looked like a good dad trying to keep a promise." She smiled at the memory. "I didn't plan any of this, Hudson. I just wanted to help, and then I couldn't help wanting to see you again." "And the disappearing act, will that happen again?" She set her glass down. "My company employs thousands of people around the world. Sometimes crises happen that need my attention." "But I should have explained better," called Moore. "That's on me." "So what happens now? You go back to being a billionaire CEO, and I go back to grading papers and coaching wrestling? Why can't we do both?" She moved closer to him. "I'm still just Eliza. You're still just Hudson. We're still the people who talked about books and pushed Sophie on swings. It's not that simple, and you know it. It can be, if we choose to make it that way." She took his hand. "I'm not asking you to join my world or to pretend the differences don't exist. I'm just asking for a chance to figure it out together." Hudson looked down at their joined hands. "What about Sophie? She got so attached to you, and then you were gone." "I meant what I said to her. I'm not disappearing again." Eliza squeezed his hand. "I care about her." "And I care about you, Hudson, more than I expected to, more than I've cared about anyone in a very long time." He was quiet for so long that Eliza began to lose hope. Then, slowly, he raised his eyes to meet hers. "I missed you," he admitted. "Both of us did." "I missed you too." "If we do this, and that's still a big if, there have to be ground rules. No more secrets, no more half-truths." Eliza nodded. "Complete honesty, I promise." "And Sophie comes first, always. If this becomes too complicated or hurts her in any way, then we step back and reassess." "I agree completely." Hudson's expression softened. You really care about her, don't you? I love her, Eliza said simply. She's an amazing kid. You've done an incredible job raising her. Something in Hudson's eyes changed at her words. He leaned forward, closing the distance between them. I think I'm falling in love with you, he whispered. Despite the complications, despite the differences, maybe even because of them. Eliza's heart soared. I think I'm falling in love with you too. When he kissed her this time, it felt like a new beginning, one built on truth and understanding rather than omission. Over the following months, they navigated their new reality together. Hudson visited Eliza's office and finally understood the scope of what she had built. Eliza attended school functions and wrestling matches, cheering for Hudson's team with genuine enthusiasm. Sophie delighted in having access to Eliza's extensive library, and the two spent hours reading together. They had their challenges, raised eyebrows from Eliza's board members, whispers from other parents at Sophie's school, the occasional paparazzi photo when they were spotted together at public events. But they faced each obstacle as a team, committed to protecting what they had found together. 1 year after their first meeting at Harvest Table, Hudson and Sophie moved into Eliza's brownstone. The transition was smoother than any of them had anticipated. Sophie claimed the sunny bedroom overlooking the garden, decorating it with a mix of her old possessions and new treasures. Hudson's books found homes alongside Eliza's on the shelves, their lives intertwined with remarkable ease. On a warm summer evening, Eliza sat in the garden watching Hudson teach Sophie how to grill hamburgers. The domesticity of the scene filled her with a contentment she had never known in all her years of business success. Careful with the spatula, Soph. Don't press down on the burgers. I know, Dad. Eliza showed me how to cook them right. Hudson looked over at Eliza with a raised eyebrow. Oh, she did she? When was this? Last week when you had parent-teacher conferences, Sophie explained. We made dinner as a surprise, but you came home too late and fell asleep on the couch. Eliza laughed. The burgers were delicious anyway. We saved you one, but apparently someone ate it for breakfast the next morning. Hudson grinned sheepishly. I wondered why there was ketchup on my tie. As they sat down to eat at the garden table, Sophie chattering about her upcoming summer camp adventures, Hudson reached under the table and squeezed Eliza's hand. Happy? He asked quietly. Eliza looked at the man who had loved her for herself, not her fortune, and the little girl who had claimed a piece of her heart from that very first night with chocolate cake. Happier than I ever thought possible, she replied. Later that night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Hudson led Eliza to the garden. Fairy lights twinkled in the trees, a new addition she hadn't noticed earlier. What's all this? She asked. Hudson took both her hands in his. 1 year ago, I walked into a restaurant hoping to get my daughter a piece of cake. Instead, I found the love of my life. He dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. The ring inside was simple but elegant, a solitaire diamond set in platinum. I saved for months for this, he said, answering her unspoken question. I wanted to do this part on my own. Tears welled in Eliza's eyes. Hudson. Eliza Kincaid, billionaire CEO and the woman who reads bedtime stories to my daughter with all the right voices, will you marry me? Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, Eliza reflected on how differently her life might have turned out if her blind date had actually shown up that night. Some would call it fate, others coincidence. But Eliza preferred to think of it as the best business decision she'd ever made, investing her heart in a man who saw her true value beyond any balance sheet. In the end, the billionaire found something more precious than all her wealth. A family that loved her simply for being Eliza.